Let me make sure that this is working fine. There we go. Okay, so welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. Wow, it's a lot of excitement already. Hey, I like that. Cool. So yeah, we have a lot of cool information for you here today. So our talk is called a Tactical Approach to a Fantastical Mix. It was a lot of people coming up with that name together, by the way. We had a meeting for that. Yeah, we did. Anyway, so today we're going to be talking about addressing challenges related to balance and scale. As you know, it is a big game. There was a lot of content in there, and that brought some challenges. But before we get into that, we're just going to introduce ourselves. So my name is Matheus Vilano. I'm a senior technical sound designer at Larian. I worked on a bunch of things. Here's some of them. Dynamic mixing, for example. Did a lot of tools development as well for the team. You're welcome, Frank. Sound systems with Matheus, our audio programmer here. And yeah, there you go.
And I'm Seyral. I'm a senior sound designer at Larian. I've been working there for almost 5 years now, mostly on BG3, and I've been doing a bit of everything, dynamic mixing, ambience, animation, VFX, spells, like a bit of everything really. So yeah, so let's present the project. So for people that don't know Baldur's Gate 3.
Somehow, just kidding.
Somehow. That's a bit weird, but yeah, just a little reminder. So BG3 is a tactical RPG, so real-time exploration with turn-based combat. Set in the D&D universe, it's an interactive narrative experience, so you have a lot of dialogues, tons of choices, meaningful actions. And the game has multiple camera perspectives. So it's a top-down game, and you can jump from zoom to almost third-person view.
Plus the tactical view. Like
and
an
the
actual
tactical
top-down.
Yeah. True, in combat.
It's a lot. Cool.
Broken. Must have been here a while.
You think it's dangerous?
Of course it's dangerous. Zoru was right. Yellow as a toad, and twice as ugly.
The thing's dangerous. Leave it for the goblins to kill.
Your skull pounds in response to the prisoner's white-hot stare. Her lips don't move, yet you hear her voice.
Get rid of them. Holy hells! Another one.
Lay tight, Dimessa. Dimessa! Watch out! I'm ready. Be quick. Dimessa, no!
something.
Spasm grips your chest. Your strength falters. An emptiness grows within you, Paladin. Something has been lost.
You've broken your oath, Paladin. At the close of day, I will be waiting for you. We have much to discuss.
So yeah, why did we come up with this talk? There's a few reasons. First of all, issues related to mixing, scale, design coherence, things like that. It's a general, it's a topic of general interest, right? There's not a lot of standardized techniques. Game audio is very new. If you compare it to something like post-production audio for film, film's been around since forever, right? Now game audio is, compared to the film industry, for example, it's new. And that's a double-edged sword in a way, because sure, there's not a lot of standardized things, right? But it's also the time for experimentation. We can do whatever we want and find out new ways to do things, which is good. Oh, that didn't work. There you go. Yeah, also, yeah, like those challenges, of course, they change depending on what game you're working on. Depends on the style, depends on the genre. So much in the changes, the challenges you encounter, right? Now, there's a few cool challenges that we had here with Baldur's Gate. Those are the three main things we're going to be discussing today. So you have 3D spatial audio, design coherence, so how did we make things that sounded completely different play well in the mix, kind of thing, and ambient submixes. There's a lot of cool stuff the Hoban did in there.
A little bit.
No, just a little bit.
So yeah, I'm just going to introduce our ideas of pillars. So basically the guidelines we used for BG3 and specifically for the mix of BG3. So Matheus is going to go over the technical pillars and I'll be going over the creative ones.
Yeah, so when it comes to technical audio, we had 3 pillars. Our systems and our sounds, they had to be measurable, scalable, and designable. So if I had 700 spell sounds, I needed a reliable way to, for example, measure the loudness of all of those spells. I needed an easy way to implement all of them, because of course I'm not going to do 700 spells manually. That would take forever. And in case of exceptions, this is a special spell, it acts in a different way, that system needs to be designable. You need to be able to work with exceptions as well.
For the creative pillars, so we wanted a mix impactful and rewarding. So, for example, combat and magic, important scenes, they need to stand out. We want the player to feel rewarded at any time, or at least we want his actions to feel meaningful in the world. We want something balanced, prioritized sources have enough room in the mix to breathe, and we need something coherent. So we want the sounds of the same category to behave alike. We want coherence in the designs over the various systems, and we have a lot of systems interacting together, and over the project size.
So moving on to the first challenge, 3D spatial audio. Originally, we were not going to do this. The main reason was we were in WISE 2019, and it was not super easy to achieve this with that version of WISE. But things changed. So here's a little bit of story time. So we made a decision to update. There's a few reasons. Mostly WACL, the WISE authoring query language. A lot of our scripts with WAPI, they could be simplified a lot with the query language. But also general optimizations from the audio engine side of things. Better features with share sets in WISE 2021 or 2022, I can't recall right now. They introduced ways to swap share sets for effects in events, which was something that I really needed and I didn't have in 2019. So we made a decision to update. And we realized that, yes, now, cool, now we can do 3D spatial audio. And yeah, this is going to be easy, right? And then I started looking more into it. And I was like, well, if I'm going to make this work, I essentially need to delete my entire bus structure right now and start from scratch. And then I told my audio director, and he was like, yeah, do it. And I'm like, yes. I was like, I'm scared. Yeah, so it was, I think it took me 2 days to go through the entire thing. I deleted everything. I rerouted every single object in WISE, everything. So I was very methodical with it, actually. So the original structure was good, but it didn't give you all the control you needed, especially for something like 3D spatial audio. So the first decision I made was to really recategorize every sound in the game. So I created essentially a huge diagram that gives a name to every type of sound in the game. So for example, we have status sounds, we have spell sounds, we have surfaces, we have platforms. What else? UI and HUD were separate things as well. Yeah, it was a huge structure that in the end had almost 400 buses. That's why it took me 2 days. I was literally 8 hours, 16 hours total, really just doing that. And I was tired, but I gotta say, it was very worth it. So if you ever feel like you need to refactor a bus structure, I'd say, yeah, if you feel like it's the right decision. I know it's spooky, but it can bring you a lot of, where is it? Opportunities in the mix. Yeah. I forgot about that. There you go. Cool. So as I said, categorization system. And there's a couple of criteria in there. I had to make sure everything was logical and comprehensive. So things needed to make sense, but also cover everything, even the exceptions. If there's this one sound that it's its own category, doesn't matter. That's a different category. It's its own thing. It has a name, right? Then once we finished all of that, we moved on to with making 3D spatial audio decisions. And that was basically what goes where. So for those of you who might not be familiar with the audio objects pipeline in WISE, you have the pass-through mix, which basically just bypasses the entire spatial audio system. You have the main mix, which basically creates the virtualized bed. It's as if you're in a room with virtual speakers. And then audio objects is in the new tech, where you have things that can be super well positioned, and it sounds more real, right? More believable. I think that's a better word. Yeah, so lots of buses, a ton of them, and we were not quite sure where to route them, right? And this is when the decision making started, right? So for the pass-through, it was pretty easy. We just chose things that were not really 3D positioned. So here's some examples. Is the font large enough? Yes. So we have some of the ambiances, the 2D beds, for example. Interface sounds, like for example, when you enter a new region in the game, there's a little horn something that plays just to tell you, yeah, you reached a new place, kind of thing. The non-interactive sequences, the videos you watch, the cinematics you watch in the game, those are also going through the pass-through. But yeah, let's move on here. Then for audio objects, we chose to go with any cinematic combat or combat-related sounds. So essentially the very important stuff for Baldur's Gate. So here are some examples. So creature sounds, combat sounds like whooshes, hits. 3D music. We have 3D music in Baldur's Gate as well. If you have played the game, maybe you have encountered the harpy fight. The harpies are singing. It's 3D position. Cool. And the main mix was actually the easy decision, because I was like, yeah, whatever else I have, I'll just send it there. And it actually worked out pretty well. So in there we have emitters that Hoban designed, a bunch of them. For example, in the beginning of the game, Avernus, there's a lot of flames. Those flames are going through the main mix. Cool. Like movement sounds as well. Movement was pretty interesting, because we could have sent the movement sounds to the audio objects pipeline, but we decided not to, because they happen too much. And there's a limitation on the amount of audio objects you can have, right? It's up to 15, I believe, for Windows Sonic, and that was our benchmark at first. Then we moved on to Dolby Atmos later on. But it was happening sometimes that we assigned the movement bus to be an audio objects bus, and we were going over that limit. And what happens when you go over that limit is whatever's above that limit actually gets automatically moved to the main mix. And sometimes you can hear the switch, right? I see a hand over there. Is it okay if we leave questions for later? That'll be better. At the end, is that okay? I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Cool.
That leads us to the second challenge we had, so design coherence. So why design coherence was pretty challenging for us. So the main points are that's first a huge game. single sound categories were having literally thousands of sounds in them and were designed by a lot of sound designers sometime. The development of the project was stretched over a long time, so a few years with 3 years in early access. So that's also kind of challenging. And even with the pillar sets, the specific guidelines, some sounds were ending up being outliers. So, for example, sometimes too bassy or too bright. So our mixed problem for that was that a lot of our bus interactions were during early access volume controls only. A solution we found with Matheus mainly was to move away from that logic and instead starting using frequency controls and EQ carving. So just a few numbers to remind of the scale of the project. So we have 700 plus player spell actions, 400 plus creature spell actions, 2 million words, 174 hours of cinematics, a huge team of sound designers at peak production, with notably a lot of them were external outsourcers. So that's making things a bit more difficult as well for the coherence of the designs. So yeah. How do we ensure coherence when there's just so much content? So we're going to use the spell system for a case study because it's very systemic. So it's a good example of why it was so important to ensure consistency in the designs. So our spell system is broken down into 4 main phases. So we have the prepare phase. We have the loop phase, we have the cast and the impact phase. We also have an extra phase for very specific spells, but we wanted to keep it simple for now. So cast and impact are unique, while prepare and loop are systemic and are shared between what we call intents. So intents are our own translation of D&D, basically, the schools of magic. So we have control, buff, healing, utility, debuff, summon. Then we have the damage type. So what damage are you dealing to the enemy? So fire, acid, thunder, poison, etc. We have also class-specific spells and race-specific spells. So that's a lot of stuff, thousands of spells, and a lot of categories. So for us, it was really important for each of those categories to have their own defined sound identity. So we wanted the player to be able to, when they cast a spell, to know which type of magic they were casting just from the sound. So a lot of information is coming from the sound, basically. So quick video to showcase how spell works and sound in BG3. So the video is going over a bunch of prepares and then casting and impacts. So you can get a little glimpse of how it sounds. Is it working?
One more? I think.
No, I will need to manually click this one.
I believe so. For some reason.
Yes. So yeah, that's just a bunch of the 700 spells we have in the game.
You should have shown all of them. I tried to convince him. He wouldn't listen.
Oh, I need to click again. I'm so bad at these things.
Oh, there you go. Cool. Nice. So here's a quick summary of the challenge regarding frequencies, because as you heard, the spells were designed in a consistent way in terms of purpose, in terms of what they should tell the player, in terms of feedback, right? But some spells, they're inevitably a little bassier, and some other spells are inevitably a little brighter, right? If you get, which one is the last one? Forgot the name of that one.
Eldritch Blast? Oh, no.
Yeah, was it Eldritch Blast? Yeah. That's a base, yeah, of course. We always go back to Eldritch Blast, right? So community favorite. Anyway, so that one is basier. If you get something like Ray of Frost, it's a ice spell. It has more high end to it with like grains of ice and stuff. So when mixing, it was a common issue that when we use the volume sidechain, so yeah, if a spell plays, need to carve room through the mix, decrease the volume of the ambience or whatever else. That wasn't quite always working. For some spells, it was like, yeah, nice, it works. For some other spells, it was too much. Like, well, I could hear this fine through the music and the ambience. Why am I messing with the music and ambience if I can just play them on top of each other and it's all right? So we started running into a lot of those interesting edge cases. So we realized that, yeah, sure, volume was already in the project, but it wasn't like it was already set up. It was easy to work with, but it wasn't really the answer in this case. So what we did instead was still sidechain, but with EQs, right? We were still using the Wise meter to measure the loudness of something, set RTPCs with that information. But then instead of changing volume throughout the entire project, not just for spells is just our case study here, but for a lot of things, we were actually dealing with EQ. We used the sidechain technique for other things as well. We used the harmonizer trick to create, for example, bass where there is no bass using sidechain. So we would read the amount of bass in a spell. And if there wasn't enough, we would actually use the harmonizer plugin to create a duplicate of that sound, pitch it down, bring it up. There you go, fake bass, and it worked. There was even a little bit of sidechain compression in some cases. But yeah, volume wasn't the answer. I appreciate that you appreciate the meme. It was a last-minute addition, so. There we go. So here's a little diagram. So you have system output at the top, and then you have here what I call the core chain, and you have the side chain on the side. The side chain doesn't actually make sound. You're sending signals to the side chain, but it's completely silent. There's a few ways you can do that. Just output bus volume, gain plugin, minus 90 or whatever. Just make it silent. It should not go to the system output, right? So here's what we did. This is basically like a more, this is an abstraction. This is not specifically for spells, but if you just like replace child audio with parent audio and just kind of like think of spells in there, it makes sense. So we had like a child bus for spells and a parent bus for spells, and there's a reason why. It's already here. Was to avoid feedback, but we'll get there in a little bit. So yeah, we had this child bus, parent bus, then that signal would eventually reach the top of the core chain, and that goes to your speakers, right? Now on the side chain side of things, again, abstractions just called aux bus, but you can think of spells going to that bus. So we would send, for example, spells to that aux bus. That aux bus had an EQ before the meter, because maybe I wanted to just measure the amount of bass, right? So I don't want to measure the entire full spectrum sound. Therefore, little EQ, usually with a bandpass filter. So you pick a very specific band, right? Then eventually the meter, sending that loudest information to the RTPC. And that RTPC, you can use it on the parent bus to process it, to use a harmonizer to add highs or maybe lows where they're lacking, or EQ to just really tame things a little bit more, right? Or it could go even further, and you could use this RTPC to go to the ambience bus, for example, and say, okay, so I see that my spells are peaking around 300 hertz. How about I go to the ambience, set an EQ in there, and use this RTPC to control the gain exactly at the 300 hertz range, right? And the reason that worked really well, I'll give you a funny quote from myself when I started changing things from volume to EQ. Because I was, okay, first things first, I was like, let me play the game critically, and let's see why volume is not working, because it's not sounding great. So I played for 20 minutes, and I remember just taking the headphones off, and I was like, it's basically an EDM track right now. Everything is just doing this, right? And it's like, it's just this bus is like ducking this bus, and this bus ducks another 3 buses, and one of those 3 buses ducks the first bus, and then everything is just doing that, and it wasn't working. But with the EQ technique, though, that worked great, because for example, with ambience and music, there was no obvious movement in loudness. I was really just carving what I needed. I was removing the stuff that was problematic. The good stuff was still in there. You know, if the high end from the music and the ambience were good, sounding great, why would I remove that good information from there? There is no reason. Therefore, EQ, be specific, be more atomic, right? Cool. So yeah, you can use this. In our case, we use this little technique to change the spell sounds themselves, but also change all their sounds in the game when there are spells playing. Right?
Little technique.
Thanks. There you go.
Yeah, so here you have like an example of the spells with sidechain processing. So you can see the RTPC in here affecting directly the equalization of the ambience, and it's during the impact phase. So yeah, we get a result way more organic, basically, more natural sounding. We have another example. I will need to do this. Yes. This time, it's driving EQ and the harmonizer Matheus talked about.
So this is the second example that I gave. When a spell is, for example, lacking bass, we need to create bass where there's no bass, and we use the harmonizer for that.
This one is set on the loop. So I think it was more for brightness control for this one.
Yeah.
All right, so the last little challenge, so mixing ambiances. So we faced 2 main issues while mixing ambiances for BG3. So the first one was mixing ambience and music together. So in BG3, so the ambience and music, they play a very important role for defining the mood and the location you're in. Those were our main tool, basically, to convey the adventure D&D feel to the player by having a rich and detailed environment supported by music. So that's really putting players' immersion at first. So in BG3, each little area, if you play the game, has its own ambience. It's very unique, and also the music is also very unique. So the first issue we faced was that oftentimes ambience and music were clashing together. So they were masking each other because they were constantly playing at the same time and sometimes in the same frequency range. Second issue we faced, and we'll get to this one a bit later, was when we started implemented crowds in the game. We ended up with a crazy amount of movement. We did not really anticipated that, so we had lots of footstep sounds playing at the same time, so it was really overwhelming and annoying, super quick. But let's get to the ambience music one.
Cool. Here you go. Yeah, so for the masking, addressing this issue was very similar to the spell issue that we had before. It was the same concept essentially, frequencies clashing with each other. But we did a few things here actually. So first, we decided to let the music take a break. You know, let the ambience shine. This guy worked so hard, you know. So yeah, you know, you deserve it. There you go. So yeah, we have timed breaks in the music system. Sometimes the music will have a nice outro, and then you hear some nice ambience for a bit. Then the music comes back up, right? We had dynamic volume adjustments as well, depending on certain conditions. Like if you enter a dialogue with a character, for example, it decreases the music a little bit overall. I'm not talking frequencies here, just the overall mix of the music. Also, when the music starts playing, it also decreases the volume of the ambience just a little bit, because they're basically, it's like a little dance. They're taking turns, right? And then dynamic equalization, because not all the music tracks sounded the same, so we saw some opportunity for some EQ in there as well. Actually, let me give some extra information back here. So with EQ, for example, let's say there's this section of the song, I'm not even talking about the entire track. Let's say there's this music track, and there's this part where you only have woodwinds. So that's mostly mids and highs, right? Depending on the woodwind, of course, but let's say higher pitched woodwinds, right? So you have all of that low end that's empty and mid lows as well, right? And if you just grab the volume of the ambience and bring it down, again, you're wasting good content. There's a lot of good content in the ambience down there, but you're just assuming that that shouldn't be there, bringing the ambience volume down, and suddenly it just feels a little bit out of place. You're like, oh, why is the ambience now quieter? Instead of just using volume, once again, we got an EQ, and we did a sidechain once again, use the Wise meter to read the loudness for a certain band in the music, send that information to an RTPC. Then we could get that RTPC, send it to the ambience bus, and basically with an EQ, it could check if there was a lot of bass in the music. If there was bass in the music, I would just carve it from the ambience, right? So I was selectively removing the content that was causing the problem, right? Cool. You're welcome.
Super organic again, and more natural sounding overall. So for the second issue, achieving clarity with the crowd sound management. So that's an issue that appeared quite late in production for us. So basically when the crowd system was implemented. So too many footsteps being played at once on small areas, making a mix a bit too dense and too messy. So our solution was to come out with a clustering system, and from there driving RTPCs to better scale and get an organic management of the crowd sounds. So cluster system made by this dude. Bravo.
Thanks, Matt.
Was really nice. If you have questions about that, you'll be able to answer them, maybe. So clustering system, I'm going to break down a bit the crowd system first, part by part. It's basically divided by three main components. So the clustering system grouped characters and was tracking characters in each group to just check which one were moving and which one were standing still. So each character knew how many characters around them were also moving. That allowed us to drive the RTPCs to scale the footstep density with volume filtering or even reverb sense. So yeah. Then we had, actually, yes, thank you. We had volumes, so that's basically where our main Walla was implemented. So we were using the same volume as for the ambience beds. So it's kind of our 2D Walla using quadraphonic files. From those volumes, we could know the active characters in the volume and drive an RTPC to also scale the Walla. And on top of that, we were using tags, so to include or exclude character from those that Walla. So for example, there is an area in the game that's a goblin camp. So we wanted to make a specific Walla just for the goblins. But we wanted for the Walla to decrease if you kill all the goblins there. So basically using the tag, okay, check the race, it's a goblin, and kill the goblin, you have the volume decreasing. So the third one, so those are the stations. So by combining the clusters and the volumes, it allowed us to create some stations. So each cluster knows how many moving and stationary characters you have in them. So from there, you can spawn an emitter in the center of a cluster that would play a secondary walla, scaled by the number of stationary characters in the cluster. That would also feed the volume tags. So basically, you're in the city. So you're walking, you have the whole city ambience, the whole walla in 2D quad file playing, and you decide to zoom on a specific group of characters. And this is where you will have that secondary walla positioned in 3D, giving way more details and basically giving a bit more immersion in there. And yeah, another very cool stuff was that those stations were able to react to change in the script. So a good example is that if you play a bard, you decide to play music in the city. The crowd is going to react whether you succeed or fail the performance, and they're going to either cheer you up or boo you, and that's where the stations are used with the cluster system. Also, if you decide to start a fight in the city, crowd will enter a fleeing state, and same system working there. Everyone's going to scream in panic, and it's pretty fun. So we have a video here that shows the clustering system in action. So it's in the city. Sorry for the spoilers for those who were not there. But you can see the cluster in actions with the people, the count, people moving, standing still. And you can see the RTPC affecting directly the volume of the footsteps density. But it was also used for a lot of filtering and the reverb, as I said. So let's listen to it. Oh yeah, the footsteps are soloed, and then the rest of the ambience is being added, so you can really hear how it blends together.
Just the sort he'll deal with.
Loved ones.
I'm sorry.
You will isn't what's orders.
Here, here.
Here, here. Surely you can't agree with her talking
About the next one.
My shot's pilfered every day by rugs like him. City should be for proper folk who earn their crust.
All these people. They should be at home with their loved ones.
Look around you. It's peaceful, isn't it?
So yeah, I think the cluster systems, I think the count was up to 3 or 4 characters. We started decreasing the footsteps because without that, it was just complete madness. And I think, oh, I need to click again. Thank
You gotta
you.
do this. What?
Are we losing control? Are we?
We're being hacked. There we go.
Thanks. Should we click F11 or something?
Yeah.
So, best feature of the crowd systems, those are the crowd reactions.
Orders are orders. We got ours, you got yours.
There must be something. Slaps for days.
Please, my son.
You were witnessed assaulting someone. You're headed.
Yeah, so that's pretty nasty. But it gives a good example of the crowd reactions and just like, yeah, it's very nasty. I'm sorry. Should I press F11 again?
Yeah.
Okay. And I need to click here and here.
There we go. Finally, the time you've been waiting for. Cool. So those are the topics, just so you remember what we talked about. And yeah, I'll open it up for questions now.
So round of applause for
Thank you.